So this is a painting that I started a few days ago, and I spent most of yesterday working on it. And when I finished working on it, I just left it on the easel for overnight, because I know that I can't tell whether something is any good until the next day. So I left it on the easel. Oh, the other thing I know is that, so I left it on the easel overnight, and I got up this morning and I looked at it and decided I absolutely hated it. And one thing I find is that I know when a painting is good, and I also know when it's bad. And if I've worked on a painting and I want to ask somebody else's opinion, that means it's bad, because I'm just looking for somebody to tell me something other than I absolutely know. So I'm going to rework this painting. I don't have in mind a very firm idea of where I'm going with it, except that it will have a low horizon. I kind of like these little clouds, and I kind of like this passage here, but I know it will not be possible to preserve either of those things, just because you really can't work the paint into the background properly. So I will just think I'll do the whole thing over again and see where it ends up. Yesterday I was playing Eliza Gilkison, and today I'm playing Josh Ritter, in the hopes that maybe different music will help something different happen. So what I'm going to do is start with the sky and some solvent, and I just grabbed the wrong color paint, and just see what happens. See, that's much lighter than I thought it was, actually. It's much lighter than it is on the palette. So that's not good. So let me make it darker. I'm going to add a little Payne's Gray to, this is basically Payne's Gray and white with just a touch of French ultramarine. Most of the paints I use are Winsor & Newton paints, and that's what those are, except I use, I think it's Gamblin, titanium and flake white mixed together, just because it dries a little faster. It's interesting how dry this is. The heat's on, and it gets very warm in my house, which is part of the reason I bought this particular condo, because I wanted heat to be included in the condo fee, so I would never have to worry about a heating system again. And that's worked out well, and the heat is abundant, which is really nice. Okay, so, well, it's certainly better than it was. What am I going to do with this bottom part? Well, actually, one thing that would be interesting to do is to see how wet this paint still is, and what happens if you just go over it. Okay, so the answer is it's not very wet at all. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Actually getting some really nice pastels in here. Really kind of like that. Could it possibly be that easy? No, I don't think so. So, clean the brush. Actually, when I look at it on the iPad to see what's happening, it looks different because it's reversed. And so when I look at it on the iPad, I'm seeing a little bit of water in here maybe, which I didn't see when I was just working on it. So it's interesting. I'm very interested in what paint does. Whoops, that's a mistake. brush. Let's see if we can just get this edge here to look. So these low horizons tend to work better if they're not hard horizons. It gives more a sense of depth if the oh good lord, why can't I get the paint to stick? It gives more a sense of depth if the sky and the land kind of merge, which is how you would see them because of well, just because of how far we can see, and the fact that detail gets lost the further in the distance you go. So let me see if I can mix up some more of this paint, which I run out of, and see if I can get this to just look like I meant it. So I'm very nearly out of white paint, which is going to likely present a challenge of some kind. I have to take a couple of pieces over to the Cambridge Art Association this afternoon, and after I do that, I can go to paint. But for right now, I'm just kind of stuck with what we have. Let me get green off of this brush. Let's see if I can get a good one here. So part of what's happening here is that the paint is not being absorbed into the canvas the way it would be if it were a fresh canvas, because there's already paint sealing some of the texture here. So that's kind of interesting. I don't quite know what's happening here, and I'm pretty sure I don't like it. Let me see if I can get some white on there and get that out of there. Oh, good lord. I'm very interested in what paint does physically, and sometimes it just doesn't do what I want it to do. And it depends on a lot of things. It depends on the ambient temperature, depends what's on the canvas, it depends what kind of canvas it is, it depends whether I'm using a brush or a palette knife, depends how wet the paint underneath is. Okay. Gray up here. I wonder what was under there that made that happen. So I'm actually kind of liking the foreground a lot, which is odd because all I did was put a layer of light gray paint over the still partially wet paint that was underneath. But it's that kind of surprise that's really a lot of what I like about painting. Let's get a little bit of definition over here with the palette knife, maybe. Took off a little too much paint right there. Scrape a bit of it down, but I don't want to leave the underpainting shown. And a lot of the artists we know best, the real masters, did underpaintings. generally in just one color, generally a gray, to set the tones, and then they put the color in at the very end. But I don't do that. When I talk about underpainting, I really mean the painting under the one that I'm working on right now. I don't believe there is anything you can't paint with, and that includes fingers, and sometimes I paint with tissue paper. So I have, this is 1.5 inch gallery wrapped canvas, and I have taped the back edge of the sides so that only about maybe 3/8 of an inch of blank canvas is still showing, and I'm going to paint that. What I'm doing right now is painting that gray so that when it goes into a frame, pretty much any frame you use, you're going to be able to see just a little bit of basically what's around the bend, what's on the side of the canvas. And I want that to be consistent with what's on the front of the canvas, and I'm getting paint places I don't want to. Oops. Tripping over my cords. This is only the second video I've made, and actually the first one I didn't make. Somebody else shot that. But I liked it so much that I asked my daughter to for Christmas, I think it was Christmas, oh, it could have been my birthday. In fact, it was my birthday, to get me this setup so that I could film myself on my iPad. So I have a holder for the iPad and fairly bright light, which I've tried to tune to natural daylight. So that's another thing that happened. I have not found a lighting system that works for me at night. And I don't quite know what's wrong with what I'm doing, but I do know that if I paint at night and then I look at it in the morning, it's much too white. Let's see what happens here. It's kind of neat. A little more interest there. This little thing here, I don't know what that is. I don't know if you can see it very well, but I think it could. I'd like to see what that looks like if it's emphasized just a little bit. I don't know if you remember the kind of yellowish clouds that were right here on the other painting. I'm really liking this. Wow. I'm thinking that might be a good thing to emphasize it with. On the other hand, if I put yellow on there, it's going to be misery trying to get it off if I don't like it. But such are the challenges of painting. And I think I'm going to make it a very, very light combination of white and yellow ochre pale. So I like the color of it. that becomes. Oh, there it is already, except it needs to be a little lighter. Now, what am I going to put it on with? I think I often paint with chip brushes. These are chip brushes. They're very cheap brushes with very sparse is not the word I mean, but not dense bristles. And they give you very interesting effects, and they're really easy to clean. And you buy them from Amazon for 36 cents each. Which means that if you don't clean the brushes in time, and they're just too mucked up, you can just toss them. So, oftentimes when people are looking at my paintings, they will ask me, what is that? And the truth of the matter is, I don't have a clue. And so sometimes I try to make something up, and other times I just say I don't know. Okay, so I am really happy with how this is coming along. I think Josh Ritter is really helpful. This is too much. A little less. So, the sky is really boring. So, this is a place where running out of white is, well, actually I probably have enough left. This is definitely too much. Whatever it was. It's basically drawing too much attention to this stuff. And since we don't know what it is, that's probably not a good thing. Okay, so what kind of sky do I want here? I think if the colors are that muted, it's gonna drive me nuts. Paper towels. Okay, so I think if the colors are this muted, that a dark sky would probably make sense. Not that my skies always make sense by a long shot. So this very light gray that's on there now was sometimes I just like messing around with the paint. The very dark sky, the very light sky that's on here now is I think I might have mentioned it's white and Payne's gray. I think, however, I'm going to mix up a little white Payne's gray and blue to kind of pick up here. And that there must have been blue on the underpainting because there was no blue in the sky color before. So I don't think you can't see me mixing the paints, and I don't dare adjust the setup because I don't think I'd be able to get it back. So you just have to take my word for it that I'm mixing white and Payne's gray. And now I'm taking a bit of that paint and putting in more Payne's gray. some French ultramarine. And often, I mean, sometimes for skies, I generally blend some colors on the palette. But often I just blend them while I'm painting. So let's see what brush might be good for a sky right now. Yeah, I think this one might work well. Now the problem with this brush is it's very loose bristles. And sometimes I accidentally flick my wrist too much and I end up with paint spatter all over my hardwood floors, which I then have to stop and clean up. So we'll hope that doesn't happen. So let's see where we're going here. Sometimes when you're layering paint like this, paint just pulls off for some reason. I don't know why that happens, but it's not a good thing. So this is a Payne's Greenwood blue. We're maybe just going to try a little bit of straight Payne's gray straight into the paint. The light that makes it possible to do the video actually produces a bit of glare on the painting, which is why I keep moving my head to look at it at a different angle. Ooh, I like that. This kind of dark thing right at the top edge. Dark thing probably being a cloud, so that would make sense. I don't ever paint clouds as definite shapes. They're always very amorphous shapes. So you can tell it's a cloud, but they don't have, a lot of people paint them with distinct edges, and I just don't do that. Largely because it is really hard to do it so it doesn't look terrible. Partly because this is way more fun. Why is that so wet? I do it. So let me see what we've got here. Okay, so this guy actually looks a lot better in real life than it does in the video. I think I really want a little more drama in the sky, so let's work on that. And there is no reason why the sky can't come down and sort of hit the horizon. And maybe even hit the land. Paint's pulling off. It's annoying. So if another artist who's had experience with this sees this video and then tell me why the paint's pulling off, I would really appreciate an email. So, again, as I say, the sky is much better in real life. And I think it's because the camera isn't really picking up all the subtleties of it. I think I can get a little more drama into it by... I love painting skies. Turner is my favorite artist. By putting some white in here. Since on the camera it's reversed, I'm trying to identify, that's what that is. I'm trying to identify what that little spot is, where it is actually on the canvas. And it's another place where paint is pulled away a bit, so we'll just pretend we meant it. And add some white there. Just trying to figure out if I want a little bit of yellow in the sky, and I think maybe I do. So I will take my really cheap brush with the yellow on it, see what I can do with. Where do I want it? Well, that's certainly very yellow. That's a little more than I was expecting, but let's see what happens. I think if we're going to do it, we need to do more of it to make it look like we meant it. I think that's the editorial we, not the royal we. Maybe a little bit over here too. These two shapes kind of join each other a bit. Oops, too much. But good, when you're working wet on wet, it's fairly easy to fix stuff like that if you don't like it. Oh, I know what let's do. Let's pull this shape down here. Join up with the shape. These need to be lighter. It's pretty easy. Just spread out the paint a little bit. I don't quite know what's happening here, but I'm pretty sure I don't like it. So. This edge ought to come down just a little more. blend this guy into a landscape. So I think this is pretty good, and I think the danger at this point is to overwork it, because it really looks pretty fresh and spontaneous. And I would like to keep that feeling. See what I mean? You do one thing, and then you have to do something else, and after a little while, the whole thing's just not working anymore. So I sign my paintings by scratching my signature into the wet paint, which is a little hard to do when it's vertical like this, but let me see if I can make it work. Yeah, this will work. Okay, so you think that would have worked, but the problem is it's during, some artists want to draw a lot of attention to their signature. I would prefer to be a little more subtle about it. So, I think that's better. All right, I think we're gonna call this done for now, and it has to go through the morning test tomorrow. We'll just see what it looks like to me in the morning. Thank you so much for watching.